Hello, everybody. My name is Tom Oliver, and I'm co-hosting this year's Enlightened Business Summit. This is the fourth Enlightened Business Summit and the best ever. We have such a global, diverse, and exciting lineup that, again, I'm truly excited to be a part of this year and to be co-hosting this summit. Please do not forget to go to our Facebook page at Enlightened Business, that's E-N-L-I-G-H-T Business, at Facebook to connect with others, post questions, feedback, and comments, also with regard to this upcoming session. It is my great honor to introduce you to someone I hold in very, very high regard, and an individual you could truly call a modern Renaissance man, because he bridges so many different areas and has created extraordinary success. Welcome to today's Enlightened Business Summit session, Bill Liao. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you so much, Tom. And I have to say that no matter how expert I get with language, hearing flattering language about myself is always an excruciatingly embarrassing experience. So I thank you for the acknowledgement as well, and it's reciprocated.
Thank you very much. A little bit about your background. You're a diplomat, investor, entrepreneur, business mentor, speaker, and author. You co-founded the business social network service Xing, X-I-N-G, which is one of the largest professional business networks in the world. You're also a venture partner at SOS Ventures, which is a global venture capital firm and investment management firm. You're also a special diplomatic envoy for St. Kitts and Nevis for sustainable development and the environment. You are the founder of WeForest.org, that's W-E-Forest, F-O-R-E-S-T.org, an international not-for-profit organization combating global warming in the most natural way possible by sustainably and holistically reforesting previously degraded land. I still remember when you and I talked and the first tree was planted, and your organization is approaching planting its millionth tree. So fantastic congratulations to this extraordinary achievement, Bill.
Thank you. Actually, the number's been updated a little. We're at 4.7 million.
Oh, my God, this is incredible. Fantastic. Well, even more congratulations then. And great tribute to how language can change the world and our planet. We're going to get to that in a second. I just wanted to mention you're also the co-founder of a very, very exciting initiative, which is the Coder Dojo movement, C-O-D-E-R-D-O-J-O movement, to assist young people to learn how to program. Very, very exciting. Yes. And just to mention a few of the websites again, it's WeForest.com and obviously then Coder Dojo. You also wrote a fascinating book which is called Stone Soup, a secret recipe for making something from nothing. You're also a regular speaker at conferences, seminars around the world, including at TAT Globe Forum in Sweden and the London School of Economics. And before we get to the session, you have just written another book, and you were so kind to offer a special free Kindle giveaway to the first 50 people, first 50 listeners who sign up for this. The title of the book is What the Tweet. The description is How to Create New Language for Fun and Profit. And here's a special link and information. Just let us know, to all you listeners out there, one gem you have learned from the Enlightened Business Summit on our Facebook page. And if you're one of the first 50 people to do so, we will have Bill send you access to a Kindle version of the book. First step, please post something on Facebook. Second step, please go to enlightenedbusiness.com. That's 3 S's in the middle. enlightenedbusinesssummit.com. enlightenedbusinesssummit.com/ebook. enlightenedbusinesssummit.com/ebook. And Bill will give away his new book for free to the first 50 listeners who sign up. Fantastic, Bill. All right, so let's get to it. The title of today's session is The Real Power of Imaginative Language. So maybe we start with the basics. How would you define imaginative language?
So my definition for imaginative language, Tom, is new language. Something that hasn't been said before in the context in which you hear it. What does that mean? It means it may be the words have been used before, it may be the words have been used in a different way. The meaning that they impute has never been associated with that context. So if you look at every field of human endeavor, if you look at every area where innovation occurs, you need to describe that innovation. You need to communicate that innovation. You need to impute the value. And that requires, in general, for it to be effective, new imaginative language.
That is exciting. How do you think some of the rock star brands like Google and Apple, and we talked a lot about Google and Apple in the sessions last week, including with some of the guys from Google and Jess Frampton, the global group CEO of Interbrand, how do you think some of these rock star brands use imaginative language? And what can we learn from it?
Actually, a lot of them don't use language very imaginative at all. However, the sine qua non of a great brand, in my view, is imaginative language. I think you could describe Apple's use of language as more physical language, design language, rather than actual words. Language, in my view, it requires imputing or transmitting or communicating concepts. And I think Apple has a design Bible that is a form of language. And I think the more interesting brands that do use language, or that have found words, great new words for things, they're the ones that are the most innovative. I mean, if you have a boring product and you can find great new words for that product, or you have a product that's a commodity and you can find great new words for that product, I think that's really transformational. And I'd like to give you an example. In 1977, a spree killer was standing about to be executed. And his words before he was literally killed for his crimes were, let's do this. Now, exactly 10 years later, an advertising executive working in an agency for Nike recalled those words and said out loud, what about we say, just do it? Mm-hmm. And when Nike started the Just Do It campaign, they had around, I think, 18% market share. And within, a number of years, that Just Do It campaign transformed their market share. They went more than double, in an area which was highly competitive, where, products were competitive. And I would hold that campaign to this day is one of the best and simplest creations of new imaginative language, because it's just 3 words, and yet it imputes so much. It states a crisis up front, that people aren't doing it, even though it says just do it. It states a struggle that you have to engage somehow, or that they've engaged somehow. And it states a resolution, because we all know what happens when you just do it. Now, for a manufacturer of sneakers to thrive, it isn't about the tick. It's about that idea, that concept, that imagined, imputed value in just 3 words. And that's incredible to me. That's transformative.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Fascinating. In your personal experience, how have you used imaginative language to create your breakthrough successes in areas as diverse as social networks, philanthropy, environment, and venture capital?
So, Tom, for many years, And I mean, I'm talking up to the age of about 27. I really didn't pay much attention to language. You know, I lived a pretty, straightforward life. I had a few unusual things because I am bilingual, so I speak, Mandarin and English and now a bit of German as well. But, I wasn't the most standout person in the world. I was working as a repair technician in a computer firm, nothing special. And, I came across this concept that, the world occurs in your language, and that the future that you create in language and then keep your word about is the future that you get. But more importantly, how I say it now is the future that you set in language is the present that you get in reality. Mm-hmm. And at the age of 27, when I came across this very powerful concept, I decided to test this concept. So I literally quit my job and I started learning how to sell things. And I, from an engineering background, high school dropout background, this is a big step. But I set myself a new goal in life based in language. And then I worked diligently to fulfill that goal. And that goal came about from interaction with a charity, actually, not even a business goal. But what it said to me was, I had a vision of who I could become in order to fulfill a philanthropic endeavor. I would have to become more wealthy. I would have to become more confident in that future. And eventually that evolved into a very simple phrase that is what my life is about now. And my commitment is a world that works for all living things. And that is imagined language. That is a complete different world to the world we have today, where so many things don't work for other living beings. And for me, setting myself on that path has completely changed who I am now.
Fascinating. And it leads us back a little bit to what some of the speakers discussed last week, including Deepak Chopra, who we had on at Enlightened Business Summit as well. And this is mission always comes first. After mission, it's profits, it's whatever, but mission comes first. And this will lead you to truly create a business that can change the world in partnership with ideally all living things, with your co-workers, with, to really create a more fulfilled reality for everyone involved. So I presume you would agree that hearing your personal story, mission should always come first, right?
Yeah, I think people label it differently. There are some people who say that it's a vision, some people who say it's a mission, some people say that it's a goal. I would prefer to look at it as a promise.
Promise.
Yeah, and the first thing is the promise. Mission for some people is a very tactical thing. Now, I think that if you're going to create a promise, that's a much more powerful and larger scope. And I also believe that making a promise in and of itself we instinctively distrust, because it's likely to be a daydream. Mm-hmm. So there's another part, and it's not so much that the promise comes first, it comes equal first with actual commitment, activity, action. Mm-hmm. Literally taking the step in the road that heads to the new location.
Right.
And it's that combination of having a promise and taking action. Not just speaking about it, not just dreaming about it, but taking action that's important. I think the other thing is, if you're going to create a promise for your future and for the future of the world, you want to use imaginative language. Right. You want to think about new language that's meaningful, that's achievable, and that focuses your activity, because it allows you to act with integrity towards it. So you can look at any action you take and judge it against your promise and say, well, is that really serving a world that works for all living things? Is what I'm about to do serving that? Or is it self-serving? Or is it serving an interest group? Or is it just not appropriate at all? It gives you a guide.
Oh, absolutely. And in a way, it then, do you think it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy then as well? In terms of that the promise contains within it the seed of its fulfillment, and in a way you become a self-fulfilling prophecy, maybe in the same manner you radically transformed your life by giving yourself a promise to become, or to grow into the person you knew you could become, but were not at that time.
I absolutely agree that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We have to be wary of the semantics there, because some people think that something that's self-fulfilling is about the self, is about their self. And while there may be fulfillment for yourself, I think there is satisfaction in achieving things, it's actually the language fulfilling itself that's important. That we create this new language and we breathe life into it. And if it's powerful and if it's right, if it's, acceptable to the universe and acceptable to the context that it's set in, or even, across the context but acceptable to enough people, it takes on a life of its own. And that's really the way that almost anything can get done. If we look at WeForest and our 4.7 million trees, we looked at a holistic solution for cooling down the planet. And the best holistic solution we could find was actually replanting degraded land and turning it back into forests. And because you want the forests not to be cut down again, because it's human beings that have eliminated forest more than any other factor on the earth, you need to integrate people into that. You need to create a holistic solution that empowers village women to continue to, replant the forest and to harvest the fruits of their labours in an ongoing, sustainable permaculture way. All of that is language. All of that is self-fulfilling, and all of it comes out of a single understanding that we, not just WeForest, as in we're reforesting, but we are part of the forest. We forest. That
I get it. Very clever.
Idea.
Excellent. To drive home that oneness and to also include the responsibility for each individual in fulfilling that promise.
Exactly. And we took that brand, we took that idea, and we added other language around it, and we took it to corporate partners, because we said if we are the forest, then trees must have a value. The idea of trees must have a value. So we validate where the trees are planted, we validate that they are surviving ongoingly, and we take the spirit of that tree that's planted by a village woman around the equator, and we package that up and we give it to corporates, we sell it to corporates tax deductibly so they can bundle it with their products to their consumers. And we actually call that program Buy Two, Get One Tree.
Again, use of imaginative language. Well done.
Exactly. And it works.
Fantastic.
Language, created language has intrinsic value, and when you bind that to real world things, it's the kind of thing that changes your emotional state to be part of. And we will pay any amount of money. Hello? We'll pay any amount of money to change our emotional state. Hello?
Hi, Bill. I think Tom just dropped off for a second.
Okay.
He's going to call back in. Sorry about this. You're in such a...
Can everyone else not hear us now?
Oh, they can. Yeah. They can. Sorry, everyone. We'll have to hold on for just a moment.
So in the meantime, if everyone can still hear me, then I'll continue on a little bit and just point out that, in WeForest, what we seek to do is actually cover the equator, recover cloud cover in the equator, because when you plant forests, they actually create new clouds. And if you increase equatorial cloud cover by 1%, you actually hold back global warming for, a very long time. So it will buy us a huge breathing space if we can reforest the equator of the world. And we can do that nearly for free. I mean, each tree that a corporate buys from us is like 50 cents. And they can make profit from that by bundling it with their products, and they can tax deduct the tree. So it not only becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in language, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in economics for everyone in the chain.
Oh, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I think a lot of people struggle as well with the use of the right language to, in a way, sell their vision or their mission, whatever you may call it, when they're starting out. And I'm talking about, self-made entrepreneurs. I'm talking about people who create startups. I'm talking about individuals who have a great idea but do not really know how to package that idea to convince others to either help them, partner with them, or fund their idea. I think especially there's so many highly gifted people out there, but they are not really gifted when it comes to the right use of language. So they fail at communicating effectively what they could be doing or what their business could be doing. What advice would you have for such individuals to help overcome that hurdle?
So advice is always a tricky thing. Let me say what I know works from my own experience rather than try and advise. So what I know works is iteration and testing. And this comes from my software background. I know that if you put a piece of software in front of a user and you watch what they do, you will quickly see where the problems are. If you try and listen to their opinion, you will get nowhere, because a lot of the times when you're creating new things, people don't know what they want. I mean, Steve Jobs very famously said, they'll know it when I show it to them. And some people thought that was the ultimate arrogance. I don't believe so. I actually believe that when you're creating new things, people don't instinctively see it because it's new. So the best way to see is to say it and then watch the response, watch the direct reaction to what you've said. If you create software, you test it. Now, by the way, programming is language. It's another form of language. This is why we need people to learn programming, so that we get great poetry instead of lousy, rotten programs. But when you put that software in front of someone, you watch what they do, you see how they react, then you can tune it, then you can change it. Now, we are in an extraordinarily lucky place. I would never use social media really to promote my product very much. I don't think that works super well yet. But what I do know from my own experience that works super well is that it is the ultimate place to iterate and test your language. Because you can tweet, you can post on Facebook, you can post on LinkedIn, you can blog, you can create new language, you put it up on YouTube, and you can see immediately a certain audience. It may not be a very big audience. I mean, you could buy a few cheap AdWords and you'll see a certain audience. But what you can do is put a call to action on that language, and you can immediately test with whatever audience you have how well that language performed. And then you can test it against other language. And this makes any human being suddenly almost a genius. Because you can get the ultimate wisdom of the crowds from social media by testing your language. And it's almost free to do. And it's led to, I think, tighter, more compact, more rich language. I mean, a lot of language in the past, people have said, great literature involves a lot of words. I tend to disagree. I think great literature is sort of rich and engaging and has multiple meanings to a few words, a lot of cadence and a lot of depth to beautifully crafted words. And we have the ability now to test that and iterate over and over again, nearly for free. And that's what I've done with everything. Everything since the advent of social media has been about testing the language, seeing how it goes. Recently with my new book, I was able to get it to, number 1 or number 2 in the search ranks, having of a particular term, having a website by, again, testing the language over and over again, and not even paying any money at all. No advertising, no SEO specializing, just testing the messages. And it works.
So fantastic, and this is, in a way, the ultimate form of democracy, because anybody can try this out with social media, which brings us, obviously, to this very important field. How does social media change the language and the way in which we operate and use imaginative language? What are some of your opinions about, or views, or personal experiences, how social media has changed the way we use language and imaginative language?
So I think that social media has created the world's largest audience or the world's smallest audience, depending on what language you use. I don't think social media per se has added greatly to the canon yet. At the same time, those few who do use this and test are starting to see what it is that really resonates with the most human beings. And I think that's powerful. And I think that unusual things resonate, things that we haven't expected. One thing that I do know is that if you want to make it in social media, you tend to have to be crisp. And in fact, so much so that I created a free website called makeitcrisp.com just to illustrate to people how to be crisp, because I see so much in the way, especially as an investor, people send me investment presentations all the time. And they're just awful. Nobody's tested the language. They've gotten it out of a book somewhere, and you just know they're not going to succeed unless they get the language right. Because apart from anything else, unless you have great, visionary, powerful, imaginative language in your startup, you're not going to attract staff. You're not going to attract investors. You're not going to attract co-founders, and you're not going to attract customers. I mean, lone heroes only wish the movies.
Can you give us some practical examples of that without obviously naming anybody or specifically, but can you give us some practical examples you've come across of very good practical ways to use language and very bad ways?
So I think that Aristotle, when he wrote the Poetics, really defined what a human story is. And I think human stories, generally have a few elements. And the simplest stories, in my view, have a crisis, they have a hero, they have a struggle, they have a denouement, a resolution. And I think if you use language in that way and you tell a story, especially as a startup, you tend to engage people in a way that suspends their disbelief and has them.
When I first got to know Bill, it's actually quite an exciting story. I was meeting him in a small boutique hotel in London, and he was telling me the story which he cited in the beginning, which was that he was a struggling software repair technician, and he came across a woman, I think it was in Ireland, who had a charity. And she asked him, Bill, I want you to contribute a certain amount of money to my charity. And Bill said that he would not be able to do it because he didn't have the funds. And then she said, you know what? I think there is so much greatness in you and so much that you can do that I'm fully confident you're going to give me the donation I request from you right now in about a year's time. And I'm not going to disclose the numbers, but they were well beyond what Bill could afford at that time. And what happened was that actually Bill used this to ask himself, what would I have to change in order to become that human being which could donate that amount of money in a year's time? And that was the change he talked about, and that was obviously part of imaginative language he used to talk to himself as well. So, Bill, I was just filling in the audience on just a little bit the background of the story you told us until you came back on, which very much influenced me, and I thought was very exciting when I heard it for the first time, and in a way tells stories and really books about the way we can use imaginative language when talking to ourselves, and to not only convince others, but only convince ourselves that what we're setting out to do, we can accomplish, and to convince ourselves that that mission or the vision or highest aspirations are not just dreams, but that when we put action behind that promise, we can actually make them reality. So please go on.
And that's the thing. Acting in accordance with the promise is what makes it happen. And sharing the promise with as many people as possible will help you take action on it.
Exactly. We had this funny story with Meng from Google last week. He took a leave of absence at Google, and he announced to everybody he was going to write a book. And he gave himself 3 months for it, but he used his social media presence and his blog and everything to tell as many people as possible about his promise or his project. And so he just, he was not allowed to fail. He couldn't fail because he told so many people about it. He just had to pull it off. And he did. So Another great way to use social media, because social media lets you put the word out there and lets you make commitments in front of so many people. And it makes you help accomplish your goals, right?
Yeah, don't just tell your mom, tell the world.
Exactly. What you said before was actually... Yeah, exactly. We had somebody on last week, Jim Brusher, and he said when it comes to funding, and you were just mentioning investment proposals, and he was saying people give to people, not to ideas, projects, or organizations. People give to people. And what you said is that, yes, that's true, but you have to use language in the right way so that you can convey your vision and your passion to others so that they buy into that. Is that correct, Bill?
That's correct. You have to tell them a story because most people, especially investors, are suspicious of people to start with. And in order to get them to buy into what you're saying, you have to tell them a true story, a story that has them listen as a listener of a story so that they momentarily suspend their disbelief in order to grasp what it is that you're getting at. And Aristotle came up with this wonderful thing, the Poetics. And, my view of the Poetics, the short version for investors is you have to show the crisis, you have to show the hero, you have to show the struggle that the hero has been through in order to solve the crisis and to create the product that that people are going to buy. And then you have to show the emotional resolution of using the service or product. What it is people are going to feel when they've actually been part of it. So when I talk about Coder Dojo, I talk about the crisis of Coder Dojo. I say magic. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And yet, in a time when we rely on the magic of computer programming for our very survival of ourselves and our businesses, 2 entire generations of kids have grown up as muggles, unmagical, not able to write the simplest program, not able to cast the simplest spell. And that's the crisis. We've run out of programmers. The struggle is that, we founded a volunteer organization in Cork, in Ireland, 2.5 years ago called Coder Dojo. And we figured out the best way for kids to learn how to program computers in a social environment for literally no cost. So that anyone can come to the programs, they can be part of it, they learn, and they don't have to pay, and we've proven the results. And the resolution is we put smiles on kids' faces through empowerment. We get them to see beyond the looking glass of their iPad screen and reach through the looking glass into the code and change it and affect the world. And the look on a child's face when they put up their first web page or they create their first app is just a wonder to behold.
Oh, priceless. Absolutely priceless. Wonderful. And again, compliments. I mean, really, really well done. Absolutely fantastic. Another personal question of mine, in a way, is... Yes, go ahead.
And just by the way, we're now in 33 countries, hundreds of locations, thousands and thousands of kids learning how to code every week, and not even a bank account. It's all done because of the language It's all done through volunteerism. Companies give up their boardrooms and their canteens for free, and mentors and parents give up their time for free, and the kids attend for free all around the world. Doesn't matter whether it's a poor area or a rich area. And that's all been because of the language and the proof of that language working over time.
Absolutely brilliant. Can you say something about the language we should use when talking to ourselves? As I said before, you've created remarkable success in so many different areas. What is the empowering language you use when talking to yourself? In short, how can we use the way we talk to ourselves and imaginative language in that self-talk and in turning that inner critic into our greatest success coach?
Okay, so here's the simple the simple conversation that I have with my inner critic. Shut the fuck up. I have found over the years that whatever that little voice is that I've talked to in the past is just one of the speech centers in my brain. It's irrelevant. If you ask your inner critic what time it is, most people, inner critic, don't even know the time to the precision of the year. If you say, what year is it to the average person, ask your inner critic. The inner critic doesn't know. That's a remarkably ill-informed source of information. So my answer is I just don't do the self-talk thing anymore. If I feel sad, I'll notice that I feel sad. I won't have a conversation with myself about it. If I feel happy, I'll notice I feel happy. I reserve the imaginative language for speaking with others. And social media is good for that too.
And
just tell your inner critic to go away.
Right, excellent, and I'm sure a lot of people can put that to very, very good use. How do you motivate yourself to create your successes? Do you motivate yourself by buying into the language that you create for others to motivate them for your vision or mission, whatever you set out to do? And Coder Dojo and WeForest are obviously great examples.
So what I look for is the look in the eyes of the beneficiary of the activity. So that's what lights me up. When I see, an investment company succeeding that I'm an investor in, and I see the fire in their eyes, that's one thing. But when I see the fire in the eyes of their customers, that's the acme. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning. When I see the look on the faces of the kids at Coder Dojo, when I see photos of the smiling village women as they're planting the trees, and the look in their eyes of the dignity when they stand up for being paid to do a great job that's going to set them up for their lives. Those are the things that get me out of bed. When I look into the eyes of my own kids and I see they get something and they understand it, that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. It's the look in somebody else's eye, that look of power, that look of joy. That's the thing that gets me up.
Oh, fantastic. And I'm sure a lot of people in the audience can use this to motivate themselves in a fantastic way. I just want to take a few seconds to announce again that we will...
One quick way to do that?
Yes.
Is a random act of kindness.
Can you say that again, please, Bill?
One quick way to do that is a random act of kindness.
Random act of kindness.
Yeah, look around you and do a random act of kindness. And don't ask for anything in return.
I like that. Unconditional giving, random act of kindness. I like that. Because it's great, because we can do it wherever we are, really.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
Motivation.
Fantastic. Again, quick reminder of the special free Kindle giveaway of Bill's new book. The title is What the Tweet. The description is How to Create New Language for Fun and Profit. Love that, fun and profit. Excellent. Please let us know one gem you've learned from the Enlightened Business Summit on our Facebook page. That's step one. Step two is go to enlightenedbusinesssummit.com/ebook, enlightenedbusinesssummit.com/ebook. And yes, that's 3 S's in the middle. And sign up on that form, and Bill will send a free Kindle giveaway of his new book to the first 50 people. We're going to take questions in about a minute or two. If you join us through Master Conference, quick reminder, press 1 on your keypad and unmute your phone, and we will call you out. And on Facebook, please post questions on Facebook, and then we will take the questions from Facebook in just a minute or two. Bill, we actually already have the first questions in. There's one from Jenny, and she's asking, can you overdo the imaginative language and turn people off? Can you overdo the imaginative language and turn people off? I think she probably refers to some of the VC meetings you outlined, and when you're sitting in front of somebody you're trying to convince to invest in your venture and so on. Can you relate to that, Bill? Can you answer that question?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You can overdo anything, and you can particularly overdo speaking. We literally have one mouth and two ears, and that ratio should be strictly adhered to. Even if you're pitching, you should be listening with your eyes to everything to the response to every word that you say. And if I see a lot of people, they come in, they do their prepared pitch, the language might be good, but they're not engaged with their eyes, they're not listening, and they don't give any pause for somebody to comment, and they just go blah, 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 and they just keep talking and talking and talking. If you've got 44 slides in a PowerPoint presentation, forget it. Get out get out the trash can. The other thing is, I think you can overdo crazy, right? There's a point where, imaginative crosses the borderline into, fantasy, and then further into plain nuts. And I think you want to be simple and surprising, not nuts.
Oh, it's great. And what you're raising reminds me of a session we had last week with Jim Brusher, who is the founding director of the Global Philanthropist Circle and was 12 years advisor, special assistant to Jimmy Carter, and helped him raise a lot of money for good causes in the Carter Center. And he said, you know what, people spend so much time on preparing their pitches, but they spend very little time on preparation when it comes to understanding the person they will be sitting in the same room with, which means that people give to people and people do not take enough time to understand the other people they're actually addressing. So what you're saying is very much along those lines. Give attention to the person you're actually addressing, and even if that means changing your pitch, last minute, or maybe even the language on the spot, right?
Yeah, well, whenever I've pitched, I've always gone into a room with 5 or 6 or maybe even 7 versions of my pitch, all slightly different, that I can swap from one to the other. So I understand crisis struggle resolution, and I have different elements or different aspects of the crisis, different aspects of the struggle, different aspects of the resolution. Because if I see I've said something and it just hasn't been gotten, I can reiterate it. I can say, hey, well, there's another way to look at this, and say it again in a different way. All the while listening, asking for feedback. Again, pitching to people, it's so important that you actually listen and be present with the person before you open your mouth. If you're listening to the voice in your head while you're pitching, you're gonna screw up. There's no connection.
Fantastic advice. So again, adapt your story. Ideally have different elements of the same story so you can adapt them to whoever you're addressing, and look at their reactions, and be a little bit like, maybe we could say, be a little bit like water when in a meeting and when using imaginative language, right? Always try to adapt to the situation and to the people in the room.
And also never see it as a waste of time, because the better you get your pitch, the more well-crafted your story is, the more real and understandable. That story applies to investors, to customers, to employees, to staff, to business partners, and to yourself and your own belief about what you're doing. It's an ongoing journey to refine your imaginative language in service of your promise.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. We do have another question here from Nancy, and Nancy's asking with regard to WeForest. And she says if you could give some explanation to back up the promise that planting trees will actually help us solve the environmental problem. She also cites that the National Forest Service is permitting the destruction of trees in the U.S. national forests, and she says in her own neighborhood alone in Tucson, Arizona, 33,000 trees are supposed to be destroyed. She doesn't say exactly when in the next year or so. Would you have a comment on that?
So yeah, there's some fairly heavy science behind this. In fact, we've just produced a new book called Forests, which is coming out from WeForest that explains this in great detail. On WeForest.org, there's also and .com, there's also a scientific advisory panel. There are some papers up there as well. The reality of the matter is that the moisture cycle, the water cycle in the air is much larger and much more powerful forcer of climate change than the carbon cycle. But it's less impacted by most human activity. But the one area where it's massively impacted is deforestation, because trees have microbacteria and small chemicals that they release into the air that actually cause clouds to form at higher temperatures. And around the equator, that's where the most of the cloud cover comes from. So if you increase cloud cover by 1% around the equator, you increase the Earth's albedo. That means we reflect more light back into space. It improves the water cycle, it improves the soil, and it cools down the planet overall. That combination is a very holistic impact that's difficult to see in the models because most of the models are about carbon. Now, trees also have a huge impact on carbon as well, especially if you reforest degraded land. You're actually bringing not just the carbon of the tree, but also all the carbon of all the organisms in the soil. When you turn sandy desert back into soil, there's a huge difference in its carbon content. So those two factors make forests a very, very powerful way of affecting the climate. Now, not so much in northern and southern latitudes, but between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, you see this big, unusually high impact from forest trees affecting cloud cover.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for that additional information. Bill, unfortunately, you and I, we could talk for hours, and we have on so many occasions. Unfortunately, the time is up. Thank you so much for all your very valuable insights, and especially the practical suggestions, tips, tools, tricks, and best practices people can use when putting the power of real imaginative language to the best use for everybody, really, and all the living things on the planet, as you said so adequately. Again, let me mention
I'd like to finish with a little quote from Oscar Wilde. My new book is about a thing called paraprosdokians. They are little bits of humor, and they're about where you give the unexpected end to a sentence. And I think this is relevant to everyone. Oscar Wilde famously said that some people bring happiness wherever they go, and others whenever they go. And I think that you want to be the first part.
Well, that's a great closing statement. Thank you so much. And to everybody out there, thank you so much for listening. And thanks to Bill again for your time and participation, and obviously the free Kindle giveaway of his new book to the first 50 people signing up. Again, the website, enlightenedbusinesssummit.com with 3 S's /ebook, post on Facebook, and then Bill will get this book out to the first 50 people. The website, again, among many of the websites that you've created, Bill, WeForest.com, WeForest.com. Thank you all for listening. What a great session.
Also Coded Dojo. And also CodedDojo.com. CODERDOJO.com. If you've got kids, get them along to one.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And
thanks, Tom.
To all the listeners out there, make sure to join us for the next Enlightened Business Summit session. And remember to connect to others on our Facebook page at Enlight Business on Facebook, Enlight Business. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Bill.